It seemed like a great idea, the biggest party in the history of the world, Expo 92. It was a $22 billion extravaganza to celebrate a new age of discovery. It closes tomorrow. For the hosts and the guests, it's now time to count the costs and the gains and check the hangovers. It's World City, 95 nations from every continent, cheek by jowl on a 215-hectare island in Seville, Spain. It took 5 years to get ready, and while it did, the real world changed. The Berlin Wall came down, the USSR became plain Russia, the communist bloc splintered, and the USA went to war in the Gulf, and Nellie didn't get back in time for the party. Seville changed a bit too. She got a facelift. And so did the monastery where Christopher Columbus planned his epic journey to the west with his caravels handily moored in the river just outside. He sailed 15,000 miles to find the New World. 500 years later, it turned up on the doorstep. There's a veil drawn over the blacker side of those adventures. Here, it's cultural sharing, and New Zealand was there too. We were one of the smallest nations to participate, with a budget to match, and we had further to travel than anyone else. But on a smart expo street, we took a gamble with rocks, trees and water to construct a made in New Zealand experience. And they came to look at us in their millions.
Aquí en esta sala tenemos una presentación audiovisual por las pantallas que se ve arriba. Otra vez, muy bienvenidos, welcome, y en la lengua Maori, haere mai, haere mai, haere mai.
This captive audience is on a journey of discovery which we hope will transfer to the supermarket shelves of Europe. First, we must tell them where we come from, south, not north, as most of them think. New Zealand is the absolute antipodes of Spain. Now when their children ask what happens if they dig a hole through the center of the earth, they can say with confidence, you'll end up in Nueva Zelanda. Call it crass if you like, but these are trade prospects, the ultimate consumers, and they're being softened up for brand awareness. The message is simple. New Zealand is exotic, exciting, and culturally mature. We're sophisticated, outgoing, and proud of our place and our people, just like them.
Por favor, pasen por las puertas del fondo ahora para continuar con su viaje. Please go through the doors at the back now to go on with your voyage.
And they keep on coming in carefully regulated batches called pulses every 15 minutes to find out about us. But we've had to learn about them too. Spectacle is part of daily life here. Holy Week is a 6-day procession of virgins in full makeup with love songs from the balcony. The Madonnas and their trappings weigh several tons. It takes 30 men to carry them. It's pure theatre, uninhibited, unself-conscious, and very intense. They also know how to party. They do it all the time. This inner-city community has taken 3 days off to celebrate Santiago, St. James Day in Spain. The streets are family territory in this town, and they keep them alive and safe by using them. It's well past midnight, it's still hot, and nobody's even thinking of going home to bed. Long before Expo opened, the New Zealand team studied the potential audience. Middle class, culturally mature, spontaneous and music loving. And they start young. The flamenco singer is 12 years old. It's a hard act to follow, and it meant bringing out the big guns. New Zealand does a pretty good line in divas as well. Dame Curry with the NZSO. The libretto is Alan Kono's, the music by Don McGlashan and Wayne Laird.
What we have been able to give 3.5 million people through Expo 92, hundreds of thousands or millions of people who walk past the pavilion and are struck by that experience of New Zealand that we have built outside the pavilion. We have given them an intensity of experience which you could never get with a television advertising campaign. This is a grip which is more vice-like, more positive, and I suspect at the end more memorable than anything that you could do on television for this side of $1 billion.
And it's generous. Te Waka Māori give it their all 5 times daily in stifling heat. They've helped to put New Zealand in the top 4 pavilions. An hour before opening time, and Expo staff are drifting onto the site. The New Zealand Pavilion is the only place in town to have breakfast. The Kiwis' Café de Curb is famous in the area for its freshly baked pastries. Before the rush begins, there's a chance to catch up on the papers and watch the world go by. The New Guineans take an early morning jog, while some people prefer to walk to work. It's just another day at the office, really. Informal breakfast meetings give Commissioner General Ian Fraser the chance to chew things over with key personnel, like Pavilion Director Josephina Sarayak and Food and Beverage boss Bob Sell. There'll be about 70 distinguished guests through the Air New Zealand VIP lounge today, pretenders to the Romanian throne or barons of industry. Hospitality Director Kenny Ball takes them in his stride. It's a good time for checking the works without destroying the magic, although even simple maintenance draws a crowd. The Penguin's had a spot of plastic surgery and goes back on guard duty. He's been specially designed for a child's eye view, the shortest security guard on the avenue. The kitchen's been at work since 5 a.m. Top New Zealand chef Stephen Randall, fresh from Maxime's, Paris, presides over the first batch of offerings for the downstairs food hall. Kiwi fruit, lamb, venison and mussels become a New Zealand version of tapas, Spanish snacks. These people have helped enhance our reputation too. The New Zealand Pavilion has catered for several other countries and received an award for one of the healthiest eateries at Expo.
The people we're feeding at the moment, we're feeding outside the building because this is breakfast time. This is just at 11 o'clock Spanish time. And you'll find in a few minutes our pulses will come through. But what happens, as these people come through, they've got a lot to do. Remember, you've got 115 pavilions on this site. And people have got a schedule. They might be here for 3 days. So you'll watch 3 things happen. Some will stop and have a snack at the bars, but most will shoot through here at a rate of knots, unless they stop at the shop to buy an all-black jersey or some parboil shell. But they will shoot through here because they've got other pavilions to see. And it's a long way around. This is a big site. But you see, they're starting to stop now. But some would like to stop there, but they'll only have a coffee, maybe a fruit juice, or a glass of beer. They like a glass of beer. Very fond of their glass of beer in the morning. And if anybody ever turns their nose up at power jewellery again in New Zealand, you tell them they don't know what they're talking about. They buy power jewellery here like it's going out of fashion. Unbelievable. I don't think there'll be a decent power left alive in New Zealand the time we close Expo.
Estos todos son broches hechos de paua. Paua es una concha marina de Nueva Zelanda. Este es el pájaro nacional de Nueva Zelanda. Se llama un kiwi. Es un pájaro nocturno, o sea que no sale durante el día, sino en la noche solamente. Es muy peligroso salir durante el día por este ave, porque lo que pasa es que hay muchos gatos y toda esa cosa en las islas neozelandesas, entonces es un pájaro protegido.
The pavilion staff were carefully chosen for ability in Spanish, social skills, flexibility. They're the human face on our people, the proof of our diversity, part of brand New Zealand.
One of the funniest things is they come in here after they've seen the performance, the Māori, waka Māori outside, and they come in and they say, "You're from New Zealand?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, "They're from New Zealand?" And I say, "Yeah." What do New Zealanders look like? They can't quite fathom it. So que ya no queda más de las XXL, solo hay XL. Pero siempre muy grande. ¿Quiere manga corta o manga larga?
Evie Ashton learned her Spanish in South America as an exchange student. Now she's using it to sell rugby shirts to macho Spaniards. She's got their measure, and she'll make another sale. They may not know where New Zealand is, but they've heard of the All Blacks.
¿Alguna vez habéis visto un...? Okay? One day this guy from Argentina came in, and he'd been on site 2 days, and the second day was his last day, and he came back, and he knew exactly what he wanted, "Oh, I have an extra large short sleeve All Black jersey, thanks." And I said, "I'm sorry, we don't have any." And he just looked so shattered, and it was a tragedy, and he just started to cry. I couldn't believe it. I mean, he was really trying hard not to, but he was holding it back and he was wiping his eyes, and we had every other size but the extra large and what he wanted.
It's costing about $11 a head to provide this close encounter with New Zealand. The aim of the food hall is to claw back some of that investment from the punters, but it's not the only objective.
It's very nice to make a profit, and if we can, we will. But our main object is to show a lot of people where the hell New Zealand is. Because if you think they know, I've got news for you, they don't. The word Zeeland literally means Holland in this part of the world. But I venture to say that after this, 14 to 20 million people will have a fair idea where New Zealand is. And we are saying, yes, when you go to your supermarket, you buy New Zealand food. And I know it's a cliche, but we like to say we're clean, green, and we don't glow in the dark. And that's what our food is about. And that's terribly important in Europe right now.
What's most important is being here. But the New Zealand designers knew they'd be surrounded by some flash architecture. To stand out on an expensive street required something special. And they got it right. New Zealand's cool rock face is a symbol of something Europe yearns for, and it's put the Kiwi Pavilion in the not-to-be-missed section of the guidebooks. Concern for the environment is a consistent theme among the countries of a polluted and weary Europe. The Hungarian pavilion presents a new face, looking to the west, and sounds a warning. It's a devastating statement about the effect of acid rain on a tree. Morocco shimmers like a mirage with reckless use of the resource its own country thirsts for most. Poland, in close-up, is a bronze enigma, masking perhaps an identity crisis. The towers of the European Community display the flags of its parliament, and, appropriately, the giant central funnel sucks in all the hot air and vents it out into the sky. Italy has an extravagant atrium, which takes the discovery theme to the universe, the territory of poets, dreamers, and Galileo. Its vast building will remain, gifted to Spain after 40 years. Right next door to New Zealand, the British pavilion flies its flag behind a sheet of water. It's postmodern, high-tech, and it cost more than $200 million. It too has an ecological theme. The water wall is solar-powered. The display is about global warming. But if you still hope that Britain might help us get a foothold in Europe, forget it. New Zealand doesn't even feature on their map of the world, even though we're right under the ozone hole.
A ver, ¿cómo se dice hola en inglés? ¿Alguien? A ver, más fuerte.
But then they're really very busy trying to teach the local natives how to speak English.
Alison. Entonces, después de tres, decimos oh, hello, Alison, ¿vale? Uno, dos, tres. Hello, Alison. Y aquí está.
On the other side of Britain, Germany makes a simple statement about freedom which transcends language barriers. This section of the Berlin Wall was probably the most photographed exhibit of all. Germany, like the other nations at Expo, paid handsomely for the right to pitch its tent. The Spanish host promised to deliver the crowds. But by high summer and holiday time, the Expo numbers were down. There was nervousness on the avenues. In mid-July, the gate queues may look impressive, but they're about half what was expected. There are tensions between host and guests as the party goes into the doldrums.
The reason, I think, is principally that the Expo Authority itself has run a kind of exercise in piracy. The cost of getting into Expo is too high. There is another thing as well that I've noticed, which is that Expo is an event happening in Seville, very largely run by people from Madrid. And I think there is, in some cases, almost a racial contempt on behalf of Madrid people for Seville people. On top of that, just as an example, I think, of extra rapacity, the organisers actually cancelled the sale of season tickets only a short time into Expo. And there has been practically a revolution in Seville about this, because most Sevillanos would come to Expo and they would come back and back and back on their season tickets.
They're looking for filled rolls. As a final insult, it's forbidden to bring your own food to Expo. Security guards become sandwich police so that visitors have to buy their nosh at the exorbitant prices being charged on site. There are echoes of Franco's regime in the uniformed tyrannies, the petty thumbing of the rulebook as the database fills up with fingerprint identification. You're now entering the new world.
There is no leeway. There is no flexibility. You never get the feeling that if you're talking to anybody but the boss man, that you can negotiate your way through to a compromise. It's not the way things work. Constant irritation at the gate. You know, trying to come into Expo is still in many ways like trying to enter a fort.
There's a joke here that when Expo ends, the oral comforts will have to be surgically removed. The nightly parade conceals competing forces. Generous, ebullient it may be, but one of its main functions is to lead the crowds away from the international pavilions towards the bars and restaurants of the Spanish pavilions. Like the Pied Piper, the parade has a purpose, and it's more than just letting off a bit of steam. Everybody's here to make a buck, in the short or long term, and Spain's no exception. The authorities want Expo to be self-funding, which means diverting the dollars, whenever possible, into the local economy.
With falling attendances at the gate, the desperation increases every day. There is only one place that they can go to get that kind of money, and that's to screw the commercial operators. And I feel that we have been well and truly screwed.
The first and most obvious way to claw back the cost was a simple turnover tax.
They've got a wonderful system here. I've never seen anything more wonderful in my life, for making sure that you don't do them. First of all, they charge you something like about $8,000 for 6 months for the use of each till. That's the first thing. It's not your till, you just borrow it. Each till is connected. Before, I should tell you, first of all, every product you sell here has to be approved and given a code, which is then put into the cash register. The cash register feeds 4 what they call host computers, which go to a master computer. So as soon as you ring anything up here, it goes right through and they know what your turnover is from the word go.
The Expo Authority takes a whopping 26 to 30% off the top, so they make sure every transaction is rung up.
La lata, sí, sí. Claro que sí.
Steiny. Two sangrias.
If her drawer's left open for more than a few seconds, an alarm sounds. The tall police could arrive at any second. So why not cash under the counter? Well, your receipt is also a ticket in a $20,000 daily lottery, so everybody wants one. Then there's the health police.
They entered the New Zealand pavilion. They discovered that one of the fridges in which we keep cans of Steinlager, Coca-Cola and fruit juice, one of the fridges was 2 degrees above the temperature it should have been. Mainly because the door is constantly open during the day as cans are taken out to give to our customers. I got a letter which said, your fridge was 2 degrees above where it should have been. This is a very grave offence. The fine is 200,000 pesetas, which is 4,000 New Zealand dollars. You have 3 days to pay.
Fraser threatened to close down rather than pay. He won. The rules also say that the international pavilions must close at 10 p.m, indecently early for the Spanish who have only just finished lunch and want to stroll before dinner. The idea is to entice the nighttime crowds to spend their pesetas on Spanish entertainment on the other side of the site. But in 35 degrees, even at midnight, the crowds are still drawn to the New Zealand rock face. It's a cool oasis, and it goes on working for New Zealand long after the show inside has to stop. The nightly spectacular at the Lake Show was designed to draw the punters like moths to a flame. But you have to be close to the Spanish attractions for a good view. But in July, business was slow there too. It's said that anarchy is too organised for the Spanish, and even the entertainment police, in heavy disguise, couldn't persuade the crowds to move in the required direction. In the summer doldrums, a new crowd grabber was desperately needed.
Fenomenal, very well. Fandango. Very well, Fandango. It's phenomenal.
And it took a Kiwi invention to boost the crowds and pump up the excitement levels. Enter another Kiwi, Andy Breddo, bungee jumper.
It's a brand new activity for Spanish people, and they're totally in awe. They've never seen anything like it, and the amusement that these people have is going to a bullfight and watching a bull get slaughtered. To see something like this, actually jumping off a crane and being suspended with an elastic cord is something totally new, and it's going very, very well. It's been extremely successful here in Expo.
It's a $100 adrenaline surge with surefire appeal to macho young Spaniards, and there's nothing else like it on site. It seems the rule book can be stretched a bit when the authorities want to put some bounce back in the nighttime attractions. I'm the one who persuaded her to do it, says her friend. Macho rules, okay? Dawn in Seville, and it's going to be another scorching day. Just down the road from Expo at a local dairy farm, there's not a blade of grass to be seen. It's as dry as most of the farmers' cows. Until recently, he supplied the surrounding suburb with fresh, unpasteurized milk. But his days are numbered in the face of uniform European food standards and prices. And not before time, you might think. Half an hour away from Seville, in the old hill town of Carmona, life doesn't seem to have changed much. 4 months ago, we met these two senioras out on a Sunday stroll to the local square and asked them what they knew about New Zealand. Here's what they had to say.
Ay, pues hija, no te diría yo, porque como yo no soy de aquí, no sé si está, me parece más para el norte que para el sur.
They're not quite sure where New Zealand is, but they think it's somewhere north.
Me parece.
They think.
Among other things, this senora said she thought New Zealand had lots of ice and produced pate and margarine. We found her again in July at the charitable convent for the old and homeless run by the nuns of the Order of the Holy Charity. These are the faces of old Spain. They've lived through a monarchy, a dictatorship, and now a democracy. They've known poverty, war, fascism, and repression. The only constants in their lives are the rituals and icons of their faith. That hasn't changed in Spain, but almost everything else has. Segunda Jimenez is 84. She can't read or write. She once left her village for a pilgrimage to Rome. Today she's going with us to visit the Antipodes, New Zealand, at Expo 92. It's a destination about as far and as foreign as she could possibly imagine, to a landscape unlike anything she's ever known. In a villa near Expo, Te Waka Māori get ready to go to work. They've found a way to cope with the heat of the night, and they know there's no chance of rain today. It's noon, it's 42 degrees, and it's climbing. Los Maories de Expo. They've got 5 crowd-stopping performances to do before the day is over. The pavilion stage will be soaked with sweat. Even the Spanish are feeling it. About 300 cases of heat exhaustion are treated each day on site, and by September some queues are 4 hours long. The mid-party doldrums persuaded hotels and expo eating houses to slash their rapacious prices, and, surprise, surprise, the crowds came back. As closing day approached, the visitor count climbed toward 400,000 a day. New Zealand used the same trick of water and shade at Brisbane 4 years ago. It works here too. Keep the queue cool and keep it moving. Every 15 minutes, another 500 can move into air-conditioned comfort. gives her all again in performance number 5020. New Zealand was one of the first 4 pavilions to clock up 2 million visitors, including Segunda. The complex mechanics which drive the show push the pavilion's energy supply to the limit. Everything is automated, including the doors. By the time Expo closes, it will have driven 8,500 shows and entertained nearly 4 million people. Meanwhile, upstairs, the soft sell continues. Today's VIP list includes the President of Estonia. He gets a high-level reception in the Air New Zealand lounge, protocol staff and the Commissioner General.
I see us really as being commercial marriage brokers, if you like. Very nice to meet you. I've seen enough over the last few months to make me confident that we have also achieved a very great deal in that dimension of the task as well. So I don't know what the total dollar yield is at the end, but I suspect it can be counted in the hundreds of millions, rather than less than that, for a taxpayer investment of 29 million New Zealand dollars spread over 4 years.
We'd like you to have something to...
Even the Commissioner General probably doesn't expect Estonia to account for much of that. Nevertheless, the prezzies, graded according to visitor status, are handed out.
A goblet which has the logo of the New Zealand participation.
It's all very how do you do and shake hands, but you never know where new business may come from.
We're not so very far.
Only this week we had the Minister of Trade and Industry of Paraguay in to see us, which is a small landlocked country in South America which we have virtually no trade with it. And he told us that they're short of milk powder and need a source of supply because traditionally they've bought it from Argentina, and Argentina's got a terrible drought. So we've passed it on to the Dairy Board as perhaps a piece of commercial information that they wouldn't normally get. And we've had other similar ones. We've had the chief food buyer from Marks and Spencer's in Britain through here, very eager to see whether he could get a source of supply of fish from New Zealand because of the problems in the North Sea fishing grounds. And we've passed that information back to New Zealand companies. So those things are coming all the time.
And so are the people, stopped in their tracks by the high-voltage Te Waka Māori performance. They've worn out 2 stage floors, been seen by millions of passing visitors, are consistently in the best entertainment guides. Spain loves them. Segunda thought everything was fabulosa, but she loved the people best of all. They have such kind faces, she said. Segunda will never get to New Zealand, but she got closer than most. People transcend place, and cultural respect precedes trade. After tomorrow, most of this will be pulled down. Some pavilions, among them New Zealand, will stay here. The site will become a technology centre or a fun park, depending on who wins the latest argument. By now, about 35 million people have been through the main gates. and about 5 million of those have been exposed to a New Zealand experience.
Hola y bienvenidos al Teatro 3. Welcome to theatre number 3, which is the final stage of your voyage of discovering New Zealand. Este viaje de los descubrimientos termina en la Nueva Zelanda.
New Zealand's expo theatres make the point. We may be isolated from the markets, but we're also isolated from Chernobyl, acid rain, hormone scandals, and all the other plagues of an industrialised Europe. But it's our only unique selling point.
Sea took our hearts.
Despite the pavilion's huge popularity here, it's salutary to find how vast the knowledge gap remains.
¿Has visto el pabellón?
Sí, es precioso.
Precioso,
sí,
precioso.
Precioso.
¿Tienes algo de Nueva Zelanda?
¿Qué va? No solo nada.
¿Y sabes dónde está?
Pues
Más o menos.
no mucho.
Más o menos.
¿Tú sabes un producto que sale de Nueva Zelanda?
El kiwi,
¿El kiwi algo más?
nada más.
¿Conoces dónde Nueva Zelanda? ¿Sabes dónde está?
No, no tengo ni idea.
¿Tú sabes un producto que sale de allí?
¿Un producto?
Sí,
no
algo.
No sé.
No te suena nada, ¿no?
No.
No.
Ninguno. No te suena nada.
No se me ocurre.
¿Nueva Zelanda?
Sí.
El mapa lo hemos visto al principio.
Antes de ver el mapa, ¿sabías?
Sí, vamos.
¿Y te suena un producto que sale de
El kiwi, ¿no?
¿Y algo más?
No.
¿Sabes un producto que sale de ahí?
Es el kiwi, sí.
El kiwi, ¿sí? ¿Sabes un producto que sale de Nueva Zelanda?
Kiwi.
¿Algo más?
¿Un producto?
Sí,
el kiwi, por ejemplo, ¿no?
¿Y algo más?
Pues no.
Kiwi, ¿no? Lo más.
¿Kiwi algo más?
No, lo desconozco.
¿Te da ganas de visitarlo después de ver el pabellón o no?
Sí.
¿Sí?
New Zealand kiwi fruit. It's the only product they recognise.
I don't want to be harsh on New Zealand exporters, but I have to say it's a very, very tough marketplace. And I think sometimes I see perhaps a complacency, a sense that we have always produced superb lamb, for example. We produce superb cheese. We produce superb butter. It's not enough. In this marketplace, you've got to keep at them all the time.
Which is what the kiwi fruit people keep doing. This season, a fruit glut here in Europe has knocked our sales by 15%, which means the marketing man at Expo, Peter Marshall, he's in the shirt sleeves, has to fight even harder for shelf and display space. It means getting out on the supermarket floor, chatting up the buyers, negotiating for point-of-sale promotions. It's nothing flash, but it's what it takes to establish brand New Zealand. The shoes may be Spanish leather, but there's a high chance the hides come from New Zealand. We're one of the biggest suppliers. They wouldn't know. Her audience may be eating squid. It probably comes from New Zealand too. We're a major supplier. But it's unbranded, so they don't know it's from the clean waters of the South Pacific. The hungry post-war Europe, which took everything we could produce, is long gone. Their own lamb is consistent and delicious. Their butter excellent. Their cheeses are great. The truth is, they don't need us, but we need them. Which means we have to make them want what we have by tying it to the brand image we sold at Expo.
The thing that you still sometimes see is some sort of sense that it should be easier than it actually is. It's bloody hard. And, you know, it demands constant vigilance and hard work. I think it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Hasta luego, que conera, como se dice Maori. Goodbye.
We were flavour of the month here, but it's the start, not the finish.
Adiós.
The next step is making sure the order books fill up, while that $29 million taste lingers with these people, and we're still in the race.